Hello, fellow humans that happen to share my same taste in interesting books. My name is Eric, if you haven't been here before, and I just finished the 5th volume of the Husky and his white cat Shizun, and we're about to go on a very long summary of it here today. We're gonna go over basically every single chapter. I will say my first impression of this book, picking it right off the shelf, was that it's interesting that our main characters aren't on the front cover. They are on the back. You can see them on the back there, but they're not on the front. I remember thinking, why is this book so small? In comparison, I'll put up a picture right next to me to show you, but in comparison to all the other books in this series so far, I've only picked up this 5th one. This is the smallest in length, coming up to about a little bit less than 300 pages, I believe, or about 300, maybe like 304. So it kind of threw me off, especially when the second volume and the first volume were so much longer, like 100 pages longer. But I'm glad that I read this anyway. I see why it was only 300 pages, because I could only take 300 pages of what was going on in here. But without further ado, let's start with the first chapter. Alright, the first chapter, chapter 155, so I will say. So this book all begins with a rumor about... Hey, you guys are gonna have to forgive my pronunciation. I have been told off because I can't pronounce things in this language correctly, but you're just gonna have to forgive me and my arrogant tongue. But this whole book, or at least the first half of this book, circles around this rumor that seems kind of randomly mentioned at the beginning of chapter 155 about Ye Huangxi and Song Chuitong. There's a rumor that those two are having an affair, and this is important because at the beginning of this book and at the end of the last volume, volume 4, Qu Wanning and Mo Run, they're at Song Chuitong's wedding, to be exact, but instead of marrying whoever it is in the rumor, she's marrying Nangongxi instead. So the rumor basically says that those two, Ye Wangxi and Song Chuitong, are having an affair. So knowing of this affair, Qu Wanning is there kind of talking a little bit to Nangongxi, because Qu Wanning was part of the Rufeng sect, to see what's going on, see if he's aware of the rumors, or if he is, what he thinks of them, or if they're true or not. But from that, he doesn't really get anything about Nangongxi, and instead they end up going wolf riding. And this ride continues on to the next chapter, chapter 156. This is where Qu Wanning really meets the fiance for the first time. So as they're racing, Mo Ren and Qu Wanning both have their own Fey Wolves. That's what they're racing on. And Nangongxi ends up taking his fiance with him. So they meet officially kind of at this race. Sort of thought process between Qu Wanning and Mo Ren at this time. You kind of get to see a little bit into their heads of what they're thinking about the other person. And it's kind of funny, the dichotomy between Qu Wanning's kind of cute, pure, like, I want to hold his hand sort of a vibe, and Mo Ren's very much not pure, very sexually charged stare. There's like this weird part where Mo Ren kind of fantasizes about Qu Wanning's feet. Yeah. In his past life, Mo Ren had thought Song Q's, that's what I'm going to call her because her name's a freaking mouthful, that her feet were very pretty, but in this life he has come to a conclusion that they are not near as beautiful as Qu Wanning's feet. Well, during the race, they end up meeting up at this old hunting shack where they just kind of eat fish and chill there. And Qu Wanning kind of takes that time to debunk this rumor about Song Q having an affair with Ye Wangxi, by commenting on a mark that she has on her wrist. So she was given this cinnabar mark on her wrist that would prove her virginity. So obviously she couldn't have had an affair because she still has this mark on her wrist. In the following chapter, 157, Morun finally kind of faces Songkyu, because Songkyu had asked him to give her, I believe it was a precious stone in the last volume. That was one of the reasons that he got a special invite to come to the wedding. He had to show some respect, save some face, and give her something. So he ends up giving her just this bracelet in an apology that's like, I already gave the stone away, because he gave it to Shui Meng to enhance his sword instead. But at this point, Moran and Chuaning have been observing the couple, and at least it seems that their engagement seems pretty genuine. During this time, Moran kind of has this flashback to when he first married her, and how Moran felt like disappointed and hollow and like he was missing something. It basically talks about how after he had married her, he took her into his rooms, obviously to consummate the marriage, but he didn't end up doing it. He just left her. Went to the Red Pavilion where Chu Wanning was staying and spent the night with him instead. There's a short time skip to the eve of their wedding, and we get a little bit of a switch of point of views here. We get to see a little bit of Zhui Meng, and his parents kind of force him to go out on this date with this random woman that he does not want to talk to, and it doesn't go very well. But during this interaction, they end up meeting Mei Hangshui. Zhui Meng's date ends up screaming after Mei Hangshui because he had been with her before, but he had left, obviously, because there was another chick that he was interested in. Zhui Meng gets slapped. Now, I mentioned this because there's a small community of people that ship these two, but Zhui Meng gets slapped, and Mei Hangshui ends up going up to him, just being like, "What's wrong with your face?" After Mei Hangshui leaves, Zhui Meng literally runs into this sect leader named Jiang Xi. By the way, this interaction is an absolute disaster. Going on to the next chapter, 158, we go back to Chuaning and Moran, to this evening feast that they have before their wedding. And this feast not only is in preparation for the wedding, but is also has some activities for that, including this hunt that they do, where they send out X amount of spiritual deer, and then they draw lots for certain cultivators to go out into the field to find these deer, and if you kill them, then you get a lot of money. The hunt that has been chosen by lots. A lot of young cultivators are sent in, including Shui Meng. Dinner is interrupted by an arrow. So the arrow is shot into the room past the sect leader Nangang Liu, I believe. Yeah. And hits the totem pole right next to him. And another little important detail is that at this time, Moran had actually made an excuse to leave the room, saying that he wanted to escort Zhui Meng to the hunting grounds. So the only person of our main trio, as I would call it, who's still in the room is Chu Wanning. And this letter appears attached to the arrow. They open the letter, and it's for the sect leader, who gets freaked out by the letter, and a man in black appears. And that is where we hit chapter 159. So this is where the rumor in the beginning really comes into play. He basically starts accusing Songkyu of being a cheater, saying that her mark is gone, trying to expose her and getting her to show everybody else in the room that her cinnabar mark has disappeared. Chuaning gets involved. He gets a little bit agitated and tries to set Taiwan on the man in black, because he saw the mark earlier, so he's pretty sure, in accordance with his timeline, that with the rumors when they said they had the affair and the fiance, with the bride, she still had that mark on her arm like the other day when they were doing wolf hunting. So the man keeps trying to push a little bit farther as he's dodging Xiaoning's attacks, implying that Ye Wangxi had forced Song Q into losing her mark. And this forks over into the next chapter, 160. This peers a little bit into Song Chuitong's psyche a little bit here on what's happening in her mind. So for her, she had woken up that morning and her mark had disappeared mysteriously. She had no idea how it happened, no idea how to explain it. It was just gone. So to save face, to save herself, she decides to go along with the man in black and blame Ye Wangxi for the loss of her mark. But her fiance, Nan Gongxi, has a little bit of a weird reaction to this. He looks at her and just keeps asking her, like, are you sure of what you're saying? At this point, Nan Gongxi has turned to his father, the sect leader, and asks him an almost irrelevant question. Asks his father about the voice changing spell that is apparently affecting Ye Wangxi. His father tells him, sucks, it can't be removed. In order to silence his son, Nangong Liu ends up putting his son in some kind of like spiritual barrier that he can't speak, orders Ye Wangxi to be taken out of the room as a criminal for defiling Song Chuitong, and that is when the man in black reveals Ye Wangxi to be a woman. So in chapter 161, this explains it a little bit. It goes over a lot of Nan Gongxi's reaction. It makes a lot of sense looking back. Everybody in the room at this time is super confused and they don't believe him. Mei Hangshui makes his presence known again. And this is why he's important, why I mentioned him in the beginning, because he comes back and defends Ye Wangxi, saying that he had met her before at Peach Blossom Springs and was refused. People believe him because they know that Mei Hangshui is such a womanizer that of course he would see a woman. Of course he would know that even if she was masquerading as a man, he would be able to pick out a woman. But the man in black continues to trash Song Chuitong to show that she's a bad person. It is at this point that Nan Gongxi's father, the sect leader, has a flashback to why Ye Wangxi is the way she is at this time. He had basically asked her to become some sort of higher up in his sect, but for her to do that, she had to masquerade as a man so that she could have the same power as men did. So she ends up cutting out her voice, like destroying her voice box, and getting a voice changing spell so that she sounded like a guy. But because she did that, the spell's permanent and she can no longer take it off. But before anything is actually resolved, a heavenly rift opens. Chuaning, worried about Zhuimeng and Moren, leaves the room, just jumps straight out. And as he is running out, flying away, Moren comes up behind him and it is revealed that he was actually the man in black this whole time, and that it is implied throughout these whole couple of chapters that Moran does not have a lot of good feelings toward Song Q, and we kind of realize it in this next chapter 162. There's a lot of heavy flirting during this opening scene of this chapter, so much so that they end up crashing into a tree, and there's a slight interrogation where Chuaning ends up just asking Moran why he was lying the whole time, And this is where we get another one of his flashbacks from his past life, why he feels this way towards his former wife, I should say. But he was mad at Sung Chui Tong because she was quite a jealous and bitter person. Granted, he ignored her a lot. He would ignore her in favor of Chu Wanning because he only got with her because she reminded him of Ximing. He would spend the night with Chu Wanning and then he would leave for some reason, maybe to go destroy another couple cities, kill another 1,000 people, and Song Chui Tong would take the time to go and visit Chu Wanning and torture him. So he did not have a lot of nice feelings toward her, so he wanted to expose her. Reach the lake, where they see 5 spiritual weapons, 4 above the lake, all of each of a certain type of the 4 different core types. And the last one is like in the bottom of the lake, but they can't really see what it is. They want to interfere with the weapons, but they can't because they are guarded by the possessed contestants of the deer hunt, and among them is Shui Meng. In the next chapter, 163, 2 men appear at the lake. One of them is a sect leader, Nangang Liu, and the other is Zhu Shuangming. If you don't remember who this is the foster father to Ye Wangxi. And they, as they're talking to each other, it is revealed that they planned the rift opening. Chu Wanning confronts them, and we finally learn the truth of Nangang Liu's wife's death at this time. Because from what we knew, this also is a reveal of one of the reasons why Chu Wanning had left the Rufeng sect. When the sect leader, Nangang Liu, the father of Nangang Si, had went to go get a spiritual weapon at Jinchen Lake. When a cultivator goes up to get a spiritual weapon from there, the animal that comes out of the water will ask them to do something, to get something, doesn't matter. And in exchange for doing this deed, they will get a spiritual weapon. Well, Nangang Liu's task was to return with the spiritual core of his wife. So he did that. Chu Wanning obviously got mad and ended up fighting with the sect leader, but ended up leaving and not saying anything. It is during this fight where they're trying to fend off the possessed cultivators and take down the 2 main cultivators that we also end up seeing Chu Wanning's second spiritual weapon, which is a Qin that has healing powers called Jingge. Moran ends up fighting 1v1 with Xu Shuanglin in pure Percy Jackson Heroes of Olympus fashion. His random drop of blood from a random injury activates the array that activates the spell for the Heavenly Rift. Bugui, the last weapon that was hidden below that we couldn't see, comes from the lake. That was Moran's spiritual weapon in the past life, and because Chu Wanning has some kind of weird connection with it, he ends up fainting. In the next chapter, a giant skeleton with a man in the center emerges from the rift. In my head, I literally just get a vision of a Susanoo from Naruto. Exactly. But Nangang Liu and Zhu S, that's what we're going to call him, end up attacking this skeleton. During this fight, Nangang L is injured and his curse is revealed to everyone. It is said that this came from the previous sect leader, Lu Fenghua, and it's basically just causes him a lot of pain and suffering. Nangang Liu ends up defeating the skeleton, and everybody else shows up. Everybody else that was still stuck in the room before the Heavenly Rift opened finally shows up on the field. So in chapter 165, it is revealed that Zhu Shuanglin had never really been on the sect leader's side this whole time. He ends up trying to kill him, but saves him at the last minute. He ends up giving him a lingqi fruit, which keeps him from dying even though he's on the brink of death, to expose him the sect leader and his sect and basically everybody that he hates. He ends up showing his memories in like a projection around the lake. And that is where we come to chapter 166. So the first memory that is shown are Namgong Liu's preparation for the rift. The second memory opens up at Jingjing Lake. And this is where we find out, everyone finds out more specifically about Madame Wrong, who was the sect leader's wife, and about the fake master at the lake. We end up getting a flashback of Nangong Si and his mother. He was a child at the time. He was a young child. And he was supposed to be doing something, but instead of studying, I believe it was, he had gone out to play. And he came back in late, and his mom came in to give him something. She had embroidered, I think it was a quiver for a bow. She was going to give it to him, but then when she saw him in there, she knew he had been outside, so she had asked him where he was, and being a child and afraid of his mother's wrath, he tried to lie to her, which got her even more angry, and it spouted into this whole argument where child Nangong Si ended up saying things he didn't mean throughout the course of the next couple days, next couple weeks. He doesn't really see his mother. He tries to ignore her, doesn't want to talk to her, and then she just dies. And so the last memories he has of her are regret. But the next memory comes up into chapter 167. We go from Nangong Si in his remembrance back to Zhu Xuanning, and this conversation kind of circles back to Xuanning, because right now everybody is watching the memory of the sect leader and his right-hand man discussing the murder of Madame Wrong, his wife. When everyone starts questioning why Xuanning didn't do anything, Modon tries to shield Xuanning from all the criticism. He puts his hands on his ears so that he doesn't have to hear it. But then another memory opens, and this is with the sect leader sick in bed. Zhu Xuanning ends up presenting the plan to the sick sect leader, who is suffering, because apparently the curse that he thinks came from the previous sect leader came from this ring, where you would suffer every night. Like, your skin would peel, like it would be unbearable suffering every single night because of the moonlight. But even on nights where you were stuck indoors, you would still be in pain. So in his desperation, he listens to everything that his right-hand man has to say, and this plan becomes concocted. The sect leader ends up telling his right-hand man he also has been looking for a wife for his son, and has decided that he wanted Ye Wangxi to marry his son. So Nangong Si and his line have a sort of disease, or they have a lot of trouble with their spiritual core. So to stabilize that, they have to have a partner who can cultivate with them so that they don't basically implode on themselves. So his father was trying to set him up with Ye Wangxi so that he wouldn't die. Her foster father doesn't really seem too happy with that. We get another brief memory to when the sect leader first puts on the ring. So the ring is significant in this because in the Rufeng sect specifically, leadership is determined by this ring that can only be given up through death. So for him to have become sect leader, he had to kill the previous sect leader, who was before his teacher, who had taught him and his older brother. So he ended up killing him, got the ring, put on the ring, got the curse, then got mad. Once this memory comes to a close, Rufungsek actually ends up going up in flames, but not normal flames, apocalyptic fire flames. And that is when Zhu Xuanling ends up taking off his mask. It is in chapter 169 that it is revealed that his right-hand man, Yuengshi's foster father, was not Zhu Xuanling, but was actually Nangong Liu's brother, Nangong Shu. This man, his older brother, was a sect leader before the teacher who Nangong Liu had gotten the ring from. Everybody thought the sect leader's older brother was dead. So in terms of the timeline of Rufeng sect, Nangong Shu, the older brother, was sect leader. He was rumored to be terrible, cruel, didn't care about anyone. He was then killed, or suspected to have been killed, by his master, who was a sect leader before Nangong Liu, who was the current sect leader at the time. And the teacher, was then killed by the younger brother, Nangong Liu. Everybody ends up fleeing at this point because of the apocalyptic fire, but Chuaning Moron, Nangong Si, and a couple of other sect leaders end up staying. At some point, the now revealed Nangong Shu starts losing, grabs Bugui, and ends up flying to this second rift in the sky. This rift is revealed to be the second forbidden technique out of the three. So far we've learned of three: the chess formation, the third one, rebirth, or I guess rebirth is the first one, the chess formation is the third, and the second one is the space-time gate of life and death. In the next chapter, 170, Nangong Shu escapes through this rift with his younger brother and the corpse of his teacher. Chuanyi examines the energy of the rift and confirms that it is in fact that technique, but not fully used. He didn't do it right, so there was no time concept in it at all. It was just a space gate, which basically means he had teleported. The rift had opened, somebody's hand went through and pulled Nangong Shu out into some other part of the world. The Rufeng sect is still burning. The flames were actually infused with a spell that would show more memories to incriminate more people. Nangong Shu was not satisfied, obviously, with destroying Rufeng sect. He wanted to destroy everyone that had ever offended him. So the following memories are just people he wanted to trash, for various reasons. The first one they end up seeing is an affair with Nangong Liu and another sect leader. She is there at the time, and everyone turns on her. She ends up dying in the apocalyptic fire. But during this whole scene, Moran's thoughts are not where they should have been. In the next chapter, we get the next scene that the flames shift to, chapter 171, and that details more of that memory a little bit, but it goes on to some other memories that show other people that have offended him. During all of this, Golden Drum Tower, it was this giant structure in Rufeng sect, ends up collapsing, ends up falling. If you've ever seen Ghostbusters, it is basically the equivalent of the safe that keeps all the ghosts in there. So when the apocalyptic fire got it and collapsed, like all the thousands and thousands of spirits that Rufeng sect had sealed in there escaped and wreaked even more havoc on the city and the land around it. At this point, everyone just needs to get the frick out of there. They escape and the city just burns to ash. In the next chapter, 172, Mora and Chu Wanning try to grab as many refugees as they can on top of their spiritual weapon that they're flying on, and they end up flying to the Flying Flower Isle with these refugees. It's a small place. There's a small population. It's fairly peaceful. Their there's a village elder, but everyone is kind of sponsored by their most successful merchant, who isn't there at the time, but the elder says that they can stay. In the next chapter, 173, later that night, Moran ends up walking the beach. Chuaning joins him, and they just converse quietly together until a messenger from the village comes running, saying that the village mistress, merchant, lady, whatever, had returned and was refusing to help out any of the refugees without money. So in chapter 147, Chu Wanning is pissed, and he goes up to the village mistress, whatever lady, intending to set this straight. She wants money. She is here for the money, and Chu Wanning doesn't want to fight her too much on this, so he just gives her whatever money he has. But unfortunately, his funds are only going to last him for 3 days. There aren't a lot of accommodations on this island, so he ends up sharing a room with Moran. Moran wants to do laundry, so he ends up getting his own robes and Chu Wanning's robes, and as he's washing his master's clothes, he finds a pouch in there. He finds the brocade pouch with 2 locks of hair in it tied together. This was the pouch that was given to them during the ghost wedding. So in chapter 175 is when Moran gets his first official, right in his face, slapping him upside the head sign that Chu Wanning likes him. He returns the items, tries to put the pouch in a super inconspicuous spot at the very bottom of the pile of Chu Wanning's random garbage that he puts in his pockets, but Chu Wanning kind of figures out that he saw the pouch anyway. They're both freaking out. Chapter 176. And this is where Chu Wanning and Moran start making objects out of spiritual energy. I love this chapter for every reason. Chu Wanning starts making flowers out of spirit energy. Starts making these flowers. Moran asks him what he's doing, and he's like, well, we only have money for 4 days. And we need more money because who knows how long these refugees are going to stay here. Moran asks him, how much are you going to sell for? And Chu Wanning's like, 3 coppers. Because he has no concept of selling things and money. Moran, in a kind of teasing manner, but also in a helpful way, starts making his own spiritual creations and starts making butterflies. They're fairly valuable. So Moran's kind of appalled when Chu Wanning's like, yeah, I'll sell them for basically like 3 cents worth. As they're negotiating the price, my favorite quote comes up. This comes from page 252. This is when they're talking about the prices of the flowers versus the butterflies, and Chu Wanning asks Moran about his price, and he just says, mine will be quite pricey. I'm a black-hearted scoundrel, so there will be 10 gold apiece. They both end up kind of trying to wait each other out for who goes to bed first, because there's only one bed in the room, and neither of them want to take the bed because they want the other person to have the bed. So they keep making excuses to not go to bed until Chu Wanning finally succumbs to sleep and Moran carries him into bed. He ends up sleeping on the floor next to him, like on some straw. This awkward situation continues in chapter 177. Chu Wanning wakes up, but they both continue to fake as if they are asleep. Moran just kind of thinks about, during this time, about Jingchun Lake, because now he's thinking about the pouch and how long his master has liked him at this point. And he remembers thinking that it couldn't have been Chu Wanning that had saved him from the hourglass. He couldn't believe that Chu Wanning would ever say that Moran, that he liked Moran, that Chu Wanning had once told him, even in the body of Shimei, that he had liked him, is further advancing his thoughts towards the fact that this feeling might be reciprocated. So it moves on to chapter 178. Moran and Chuaning are selling their butterflies and flowers in the street. The mistress wants everything, tries to buy them out. They mess with her a little bit. By the end of the chapter, Chuaning tells Moran, he's like, we're going to leave whatever is left here for the mistress to take back, because she is the one who's taking care of all of the villagers. By chapter 179, they're still on the island. Chuaning wants to learn how to fly a sword, so Moran goes to teach him, and we finally get to see Chuaning's sword in this. Her name is Huaisha. She's not really spoken of other than the fact that the only time Moran really saw Huaisha in action was like Chuaning's last fight, like his last real fight. So all we know is that it's dangerous and overpowered. The reason why Chuaning doesn't fly his sword is that Chuaning is afraid of heights. Moran tries to take Chuaning out on these rides, tries to distract him. After he does a little bit of personal practice, they end up going together on Moran's sword and they go flying. They actually end up going moon gazing. Now this gave me a lot of A Whole New World vibes. If you've seen the picture, you probably catch my drift. But they end up sitting together on Moran's sword in the sky, watching the moon. And Moran looks at Chuaning, and he's like, I want to ask you something, but actually I don't want to ask you anything. I just want to tell you that I like you. He kind of like waits there. Chuaning tries to almost like psych himself out of it. His self-esteem issues come up in this conversation, but Moran doesn't care, and he's kind of waiting for an answer at this point, but Chuaning doesn't give him a definitive answer, but he does hold his hand. So in his own way, Chuaning told Moran that he likes him too. The last chapter, if I remember correctly, 180, they touch ground and they separate to kind of deal with their own thoughts. Chuaning goes inside of the house to sleep. Moran stays outside. This is where Moran really takes the time to reflect on, dang, if he has liked me since the ghost wedding, how long has he liked me for? They both end up having their own separate crises in their own, one in the room and one outside, about the other person. Moran comes in. He wants to talk to Chuaning, but of course, to save himself some face, Chuaning feigns sleep for like the 5th time. Moran, anyway, he walks in. He doesn't care that he's sleeping. Tucks him in a little bit and kisses him on the cheek. And that is the end of the Husky White Cat Shizun Volume 5. This was probably my favorite volume so far. I think I've said that before about another volume, maybe like Volume 3 or something in this process, but number 5 has definitely taken its place here. I think it was worth it to go through all 4. I was discussing this with a friend of mine. It is like redemption arcs done well, or at least done in an entertaining way, make sweet moments a lot sweeter. I feel like a lot of what's happened before has paid off here. The reveals feel as impactful as they should be, and it's really made the last 4 books worth it. In terms of ratings, I would give it an 8 out of 10 on the sweet scale, a 9 out of 10 on the brain exploding scale. The amount of reveals, I think it was worth it to read rating, I would give this like an 11 out of 10. I'm so glad I stuck through 4 randomly angsty, cursed situations, thoughts to get to this one. It's just really sweet. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you have a good rest of whatever or whenever, whatever day it is. I stream on Twitch occasionally. That link will be in the description. If you like this video or want to say something, let me know. Send a comment, like this video. Whatever floats your boat. But keep reading, and I'll keep reading too. And I'll see you guys with the next volume.